Perfectionism doesn't just show up in high achievement, it also shows up in the way we connect, cope, and compare. Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Vartanian, licensed marriage and family therapist, and today I'll be answering some of the most commonly asked questions about perfectionism and anxiety and how it shows up in relationships and how we compare ourselves to others. But the good news is that small changes can make a big difference. So let's dive right in. Okay, so our first question for today, how does perfectionism affect my relationship with friends, family, and colleagues? So first I want to say if you're noticing that perfectionism is showing up in these other aspects of your life or areas of your life, I think that's a great start because once we can develop insight and awareness into those moments, right, that's usually a good clue on how we can create change or a great start in creating change rather. So perfectionism as we know it does affect how we relate to ourselves. So let me start by explaining that first. So perfectionism tends to have a lot of rules and expectations, kind of like high standards and expectations. And then when we fear that we're falling short of it, it creates a lot of tension and pressure and discomfort and even like judgment and criticism, right? So sometimes, maybe not always, but sometimes that aspect of perfectionism can show up in relationships as well, and how maybe discomfort it might create or how much discomfort it might create when people are disappointing us, or if we had a hope for a relationship or a friendship to work out a certain way and it didn't, or they didn't show up the way that we wanted them to show up, then it might create that discomfort. So perfectionism again has some sort of like rules and standards and expectations of how things might go, and then it creates those kind of lingering thoughts or feelings that might be hard to sit with. But the good news is that resources like mental health therapy helps us understand what areas and what are the strengths of perfectionism, and what are some times that it might actually be working against us instead of for us, and where there could be some flexibility instead of rigidity in those rules or expectations. Okay, so our next question: why do I struggle to ask for help even when I'm overwhelmed? I think this has to be one of the most relatable question when it comes to perfectionism. So there's usually kind of a couple of underlying reasons for this. So one being, what were the messages that we received growing up? Was there a lot of emphasis on it being a strength versus a weakness when we figure things out on our own and ask help instead, right? So the former being a strength, like if you figure things out your own and you're getting a lot of praise and respect and admiration or connection to people for that kind of behavior, then it just kind of reinforces it, right? So if we do anything different and outside of that, then our brain interprets it, oh, is this going to be disapproved and not accepted? And is this going to risk me being criticized or rejected if I'm asking for help when I've been kind of rewarded for not asking for help most of the time, right? So that could be one reason, and that's one reason. Another one, or another example, would be, what are the times or experiences that we did have when we tried asking for help, and what was the reaction or responses we're getting? For example, maybe growing up, we were in a bit of a busy, chaotic environment when people weren't as available as we wanted them to be, and being able to connect with them was really hard. And if we did turn to help, were they available and present? So maybe physically they might have been there, but emotionally absent, or there might be times too when they weren't physically available as well, and that made it really hard to rely on others for support or for help, right? So it kind of reinforces this, like, I have to figure things out on my own way of living. But the good news is therapy or mental health resources like therapy is going to help our brain catch up to the present. So a lot of these behaviors and this way of kind of thinking and belief system is coming from a place, right? It's coming from most likely in the past, but the brain and the nervous system doesn't know that it's not in the past anymore. It's kind of like thinking, ouch, that hurt, that was painful, or oh, that felt good, that I got this, respect from other people and this connection from other people through this behavior. And it just fears kind of losing that. So it thinks it has to rely on those kind of behaviors or not do some of those behaviors in fear of losing that connection or being hurt again, right? So therapy, a place like therapy is going to really help us understand those experiences and where these behaviors and way of thinking came from, and help our brain and nervous system catch up to the present. So things that worked for us in the past that we might have really needed to rely on and do we still have to do it in the present as well? most cases not, or at least not in all areas of your life, right? Some areas it might help you to figure things out on your own versus turning to others for support. But there's going to be other times where figuring things out on your own might be exhausting. And like that question was like, what if I'm overwhelmed? Can I turn for support and for help? And how can I make that help happen? So therapy is going to really help us normalize, understand it, and give ourselves some grace and self-compassion for being human and not having the answers for everything and not having to figure things out on our own. Okay, so our next question is, how can I stop feeling competitive or inadequate compared to peers? Ooh, this is a really great question, because I think this is another such a common human experience, even outside of perfectionism. I think there's people who probably wouldn't relate to perfectionism in a sense, but they could definitely relate to this question of comparing ourselves to others, especially to the people that are closest to us or in closer proximity, rather, like friends or colleagues or family. First, what I think would be helpful to understand when it comes to this question is, where is this behavior of self-comparison to others even coming from? And one reason is that, again, probably not a surprise. Maybe we're catching on to this a little bit. some, if not a lot of these, present experiences are going to come from the past a little bit, or, some of the time. And that's normal and very natural, right? Because those early stages in life, we're kind of developing and understanding the world and ourselves and the people around us, and we're learning how to think, feel, and act. So it makes sense that some of this is going to come from those past experiences as well. For example, if you were in school, you might have had a teacher or two compare you to students, right? Like, so-and-so is behaving so well and not talking, why are you having a hard time with that? Or why aren't you sitting in your seat properly and so-and-so is able to? Or if you ever played on sports, I'm sure there was a lot of like high performance expectations and being compared to other players on the team or on opposing teams as well when you're playing a match, for example. So that kind of becomes habitual. Like when we're used to being surrounded by that kind of comments or feedback, then it makes sense that our brain is kind of learning like, oh, this is how I need to be perceiving things around me as well. And I need to be comparing myself to others. So as far as how to stop with that, one is recognizing that you are your own person. I know it's kind of tempting to do that self-comparison, especially in this day and age, and from those maybe past habits or experiences. But really, at the end of the day, we are our own person. Like, you're incomparable to others. Like, you have different experiences, different life trajectories. So it wouldn't make sense to compare yourself in that sense and feel inadequate when there's really is. It's like comparing apples to oranges. There's really nothing to be comparing that to, right? And another thing that could be helpful to remind ourselves is that not all self-comparison is bad or wrong. It's more about how are we doing the self-comparison, right? Again, I think it's very like part of human nature. We are going to look at others and get some ideas and examples of things, and that's how we learn and grow. And I think when we're approaching comparison, at least when we start to notice we're doing that comparison, feeling a certain way, checking in with ourselves and asking ourselves, like, how am I feeling about myself? Or what is it that I'm perceiving this to mean about me? If so-and-so can do this and I'm not able to do it, right? Are we talking to ourselves as you would talk to a friend, or more of like an enemy, right? Or do you want to be your cheerleader, so on and so forth, right? So again, it's not so much about doing the self-comparison, then more so than how are you approaching the self-comparison, because in and of itself, it's okay. So next question, and the last one for today, how do social media and academic professional culture fuel my anxiety? So kind of going back to that question of that self-comparison, it's very easy to do that, and especially when we're exposed to social media and all the different platforms, and this really is the day and age we live in. I think it's only going to keep growing. Doubt it's going to disappear on us, right? So it would make sense for us to kind of figure out, how do I want to manage and cope with these circumstances that are going to be a big part of our daily life, most likely. Okay, so that's where you want to be mindful of, again, when you're doing that self-comparison, when you notice other people's, let's say, achievements or successes and accomplishments, what are you saying about yourself in that moment, right? Because then that could kind of feed into that feelings of inadequacy when, again, it's incomparable. Like, everyone has their own life path at the end of the day. Okay, and again, how are we approaching that self-comparison? Are we doing it out of a place of curiosity and wanting to learn, like, yeah, how did this person get to this place or finish this thing fast, or whatever it might be that you're comparing yourself to, just to gather information and learn some resources for yourself. Because again, we're human beings at the end of the day. That's how we're going to learn and grow, is through connection and relationships and connecting with other people. Okay, so those are all our questions for today. Thank you so much for watching. If there's anything else I can answer, please feel free to drop it in the comments below and I can make another video like this. Take care.